Yeah, I mean, we've seen some evidence for the actual, sort of potential for harm. And, there's been analysis, independent analysis by, group out of Harvard that shows, in top selling fish oil supplements, these, excessive saturated fats and oxidized lipids, oxidative LDL, which is a marker for heart disease. You don't want to put that stuff in your body. And so I guess the cautionary tale here is, and why it's so great that we've gathered to discuss this here is really, like John said, for consumer protection. I mean, ultimately, it's the consumer that trusts. We want consumers to trust the science. We want consumers to trust doctors and trust that when they're putting their money into something, that it's going to do what they saw on the news, or maybe their friend told them, they read a scientific article and said, well, look at this is having a lot of benefit. We don't want to dupe anybody. I mean, and I fear that sometimes, that's happening. And so this process of third-party testing and reassurance is really going to prevent that kind of thing from happening.
Hello and welcome to the Fish Oil Podcast on iCode Media. Today, I had a great conversation with my friends Alana, Jim, and John. We talked about supplements. Specifically, it is Global Omega-3 Day. And what I wanted to do is kind of dive a little bit deeper into omega-3s, one, clinically, what it does for our patients, but also what types of things can our patients do to be certain that the omega-3s they have are of high quality. They're on the label that the label is saying, that they are going to be stable on the shelf and stable once opened. Both practical tips and techniques that we can give our patients related to that, even just from their basic senses of smell, but also certifications and other resources that they can use that can be helpful to make sure that they know what they're taking is actually what they're supposed to be taking. So please enjoy our conversation. As always, be sure to subscribe to the podcast, write a review, share it with your friends, and support those who support us.
The most common questions I get include, what ophthalmological codes or evaluation and management codes should I use? What ICD-10 codes do I need to bill with this CPT code? What CPT codes can be billed together and what can't? And my favorite, how do I manage a patient who has diabetes who comes in for a quote-unquote routine eye exam? These questions really highlight the confusion and uncertainty that serves as a daunting hurdle for providers, makes it more challenging for them to care for their patients and provide those patients with the best opportunity for a lifetime of ocular health and clear vision. That's why we built iCode Education for this specific purpose. Our mission is to provide optometrists with resources to help you understand disease states, revenue cycles, and billing and coding so that you can put that on autopilot and truly care for your patients. Check out iCodeEducation.com. That's EYECODE education.com. We've developed a premier billing and coding bundle that includes all of our billing and coding resources in one place. We also have a 10% discount code just for listeners of this podcast. Enter the coupon code EYECODEMEDIA22 at checkout. We'd love to work with you. Check out iCodeEducation.com. Hello, dedicated optometrists. Are you looking for a way to support your patient's vision and overall eye health? Let me introduce you to Vision Edge Pro, a visual performance supplement that stands out in our profession. Vision Edge Pro contains a balanced blend of mesozeaxanthine, lutein, and zeaxanthine in a 10-10-2 ratio. This combination has been scientifically shown to increase macular pigment density, which enhances visual performance, including contrast sensitivity and vision in glare situations. Additionally, Vision Edge Pro provides 300 milligrams of DHA and EPA, fulfilling the daily requirements for omega-3s as recognized by the leading health organizations. This ensures your patients receive the essential nutrients their eyes need for optimal health. Whether it's for everyday screen use, night driving, or enjoying the outdoors, Vision Edge Pro supports your patients in seeing their best. Recommend Vision Edge Pro for your patients today and help them achieve clearer, healthier vision. Contact your local MacuHealth representative for more details. Vision Edge Pro, because your patients deserve the best in eye health. Go to MacuHealth.com and use the coupon code PODCAST2024 at checkout for special discounts.
So one of the biggest challenges that I think optometrists have today, and frankly, all healthcare providers today, is that the market space is flooded with a lot of confusion when it comes to supplements. So it's not that all supplements aren't regulated, but it's that because there is less regulation on supplementation than, say, pharmaceutical grade medications, then patients are forced with this choice of looking at an entire wall of items, and physicians are forced with trying to articulate the difference between, say, a wall of items where something might be $10 and something might be $50, how those differences or why those differences are important. So, Ilana, tell me a little bit about kind of some of the testing that goes into that. How can we know clinically how to guide our patients and what the differences might be between one supplement and another supplement?
Absolutely. So one of the things I really try to impress upon patients and the public is that cost doesn't necessarily mean quality. You know, something might cost a lot more, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's of higher quality. Things might be inexpensive, and that doesn't mean that it's less quality. What you do need to do is look, it's just like the way the food system is regulated, where you've got to look for the origins. You've got to look to see if things have been tested from outside laboratories, for example, if there is certain certification of quality testing that there is. I know I work with GOED, the global organization for EPA and DHA omega-3s. Any brand or, you know, any GOED member company automatically, because they've become a GOED member, they adhere to standards of quality and marketing ethics. They can't overstate the science or market their products in an unethical way, so that we can stand behind those particular products. And we do randomized testing of our products as well. But, you know, you've got to do, as a consumer, you do have to do a little bit of homework. Just like you would, you know, we always say with the food supply, you know your farmer, know the source. Same type of thing with supplements.
Yeah, I think that's trickling down a bit too. You know, my kids, in terms of just like their approach to food supply, is completely different than mine is. You know, they're really focused on, at least my high schoolers in college, they're focused on not a bunch of junk in their foods. And I think as they hit that time period where, for me, you know, impurities will not cross their lips. For me, it's kind of like, yeah, I'm going to try to do the best job I can do of eliminating those. But like, if I want a McDonald's cheeseburger, I'm going to get a McDonald's cheeseburger. And I know, and Jim and I have talked about this before. He's laughing, but you know, I just don't want to do it all the time. They're a lot more in tune. So, I guess, so you mentioned GOED, Ilana. Tell me a little bit more about GOED, because we've talked about supplement certified on the podcast before, but I'm going to kind of bring that back in here. But tell me a little bit about what GOED does more broadly.
Yeah, we're a trade organization. Our reason of being really is to make sure that the EPA and DHA omega-3 industry, from fisheries all the way to finished products, are of high quality and are something that consumers, the end users, can take and trust. And so we feel like we set the bar in terms of standards of quality and ethics that a GOED member company, if they want to join us, you know, we will take a look at their specs basically and make sure that they can adhere to these standards of quality and ethics. And like I said, we will do randomized testing every year. We can't test every single SKU of every single brand, every product, but we do randomized testing. And I will say that of the products that we test, we have had no instances of levels of mercury or other impurities that are above the limits and stuff. I mean, you know, so what we find out there on the market are products that are very high quality, good quality.
Do you test products that are not like of members currently?
We don't. We simply don't have the bandwidth to do all that kind of testing. I mean, it's hard enough just to make sure that we're doing a cross-reference of products, because we're doing products all over the world. And so we stick to our member companies and making sure that they're adhering to our standards.
Great. So if I wanted my product tested, I would come to you and I would become a member first, and then I could submit my product for testing. That's correct?
Not necessarily, no. So we're not a quality testing organization. We set the standards we want to make sure that our members adhere to these standards of quality and ethics. And we will do that, like I said, that randomized testing, and we will let the companies know if anything is outside of our standards. But no, I mean, we won't. We're not set up ourselves as a testing program. And that's where I think things like Supplement Certified come in, and that's why we make such good partners.
Yeah, that's great. So that helps me kind of understand the difference between what you're doing and what Supplement Certified is doing. So, John, we talked about that before, but that's been a while since we've talked about Supplement Certified. It's probably been a couple of years now. So tell me, with Supplement Certified, obviously we talked, I think at the last time it was mostly about carotenoids, but what's your vision? What's the role that you see Supplement Certified playing in the Omega-3 realm?
Yeah, it's nice, and I agree with Ilana, that one of the, what GOED does is crucially important, right? It's a very good, starting point for me to help organizations get access to good quality omega. And just like, you heard today, it's very difficult for GOED to police and measure and test everything thereafter, because there's so much that can happen after the omegas are made available to whatever company, to encapsulate, to market, to package and sell, and to mine, essentially. So I see that Supplement Certified has that complementary role, and working for the same organizations that GOED, that Alana's organization, work with. But in addition to that, I see Supplement Certified working not just for the commercial body. I see that Supplement Certified is working for the doctor, because having worked with doctors and your good self, Chris, and your many colleagues, the leaders in your space that are brave enough to study the science, understand the science, implement the science. Now you're responsible for making a recommendation, and at the very least, you should have the confidence that when you make that recommendation for whatever particular product, that it has this quality additional piece, that is the label claim met? Does it have what it says for the DHA, the EPA? And will that be stable over a period of time, that the consumer is going to be using that supplement? These are the basic assumptions that once they kind of leave the factory, that we need to protect the patient for. I'll just say one last thing. Just listening to the intro, it's very interesting to say that, look at it like a food. And I agree with that to a point, but then I kind of get a little uncomfortable, because I feel what Jim and I and other scientists like us have done is demonstrated that a particular type of formula at a particular level that is very exact is doing whatever it's doing. So I believe that the doctor and their patients, or the consumer, should be able to get access to what they believe they're buying. And that's really important to me. And I did that because in a clinical trial, as you know, I got funny results based on what we measured in the blood. And we never thought for a second that the supplement could be wrong. Because just like the consumer and the patient, I made an assumption that everything was good until I measured it. And I will validate Alana's point. We've done a lot of testing, and a lot of the GOED organizations are doing a very good job at providing what they're telling the consumer they're providing.
So this brings up a point, John, that that when counterfeit, so we're talking about two different things now, because I'm going to bring in kind of the idea of counterfeit supplements as well. But to your point of the idea of making sure that it's stable, it's pure, it is what it says it is, that it's stable on the shelf for as long as it's going to be stable. And so by the time that patient gets it, it's going to have the impact that they claim to have based on the labeling. And GOED will is that product labeling? Do people typically put that labeling on their product so somebody who is aware of that, Alana, will be able to see that certification, similar to like Supplement Certified, where they have sort of that labeling? Or is it just something that somebody would belong to assure some of those quality standards?
So we do have a GOED Proud Member logo that brands and suppliers and anybody can use in their on packaging, in marketing communications, and so that we have been trying to bring more attention to that as just another something to look for, so that you know that this company, this brand, is voluntarily. I mean, there's nobody forcing them to adhere to these standards. They have signed up, so they, I believe, are the leaders in the industry. And I should emphasize too that GOED, it's not just brands that we work with. We're all along the supply chain. So from the refiners and everything, we got to make sure, and at each step of the way. So even if a supplier is a GOED member, if whoever their end brand is supplying to, they can't use our GOED Proud Member logo, because we need to look at that final product. Because to John's point, there's so many things further down the pipeline that could happen that would change things, some adulterations or some other ingredients that could be added, that we can't stand behind our logo until we take a look at that company, that brand.
Yeah, so I think that kind of allows me to sort of parlay into this other idea that kind of popped into my brain as you're talking, John, is that recently, there's been a flood of emails on the people that I'm connected with about kind of counterfeits. So even some of the public is becoming aware, and I'm not sure if you've seen the same thing with omega-3s, where when we see from a carotenoid standpoint, there's counterfeit supplements that are available. People are noticing when I get them, they're not shiny, they're in a different color. When you cut them open, they're sort of weird looking inside. They're not. So do people, and that, when you look at some of the reviews, that's pretty clear. Jim, you've seen a lot of this as well. Do you see the same thing with omega-3s, or is it harder to see what's inside an omega-3 because it's all sort of oily? Like, what's your experience with the difference between uncovering a counterfeit carotenoid versus uncovering a counterfeit omega-3? What types of things might I be looking for?
Well, yeah, we haven't here at MacuHealth experienced any of the omega-3 issues. Thankfully, we have, of course, the market space, the way things are working, it can give access to bad players. And, we've experienced this where, they sort of try to copy the label, they sort of try to copy the pill, and then fill it with nothing, what appears to be maybe mayonnaise or something like that, as weird as that sounds. And, and of course, the consumer is none the wiser. And that's an extreme case, certainly. I think with omega-3s, you would be in a situation, I guess if you were to try and counterfeit something, you could mimic the bottle, mimic the label and all of that. The pills themselves tend to be transparent. They tend to be with fish oils, and so you would have to fill it with some sort of an oil. Whether or not, I don't know how, somebody might operate along those lines. Maybe it would cost a little bit more to mimic properly, an omega-3 because it's, a fish oil pill, I should say, because it is, filled and transparent. You can see it. I'm not sure. I shouldn't speculate. I'm not one of those bad guys. But I will say that, when we're talking about omega-3s in general, this discussion is so important, and the work that Supplement Certified is doing, GOED certainly. I'm a scientist, and so when we see clear results from really well-controlled trials that characterize the nutrients, in this case, say DHA, EPA, and then you get, maybe companies or, if there's anything that muddies data, that makes it obfuscates things, it is probably the most frustrating thing to me, and I'm sure to, Professor Nolan as well. We have this answer, we know it can help people, and then we see news reports come out and say, well, this causes heart disease, and you're like, what? No, it doesn't. And, when it turns out that, folks are, taking supplements that contain, maybe very low levels of these nutrients and very high levels of, saturated fats and impurities and stuff. And so it worries me because it breaks the trust in science. And, as a scientist, of course, that's very personal to me. But, I work in the industry providing, doctors like you, Chris, with, potential solutions for patients. And, we take it very seriously, certainly here at MacuHealth. ensuring that everything is right on the button with regard to, our specs and the nutrients and the quality, the stability. And so I think that, I'm honored to be a part of this discussion because of that. We're working towards, ensuring public trust. And I think that's probably the most important aspect of all of this.
So, Jim, you and I actually, probably the last few times we've discussed, have discussed more about things like gut health and systemic health-related issues associated with low omega-3 intake or high omega-3 intake. But, from your perspective, if you were going to give the listeners just sort of a global overview, a good quality omega-3, what am I looking for clinically to help with, let's say, the ocular surface and maybe some metabolic protection related to the retina? In your mind, what are the things that I'm thinking about in terms of benefits? And then in terms of what am I looking for in the supplement to have an impact on both of those tissues?
CooperVision and the AOA have joined forces in a groundbreaking initiative to transform how optometrists treat children with myopia. The Myopia Collective aims to unite our profession and its allies to challenge the status quo and elevate the standard of care for children with myopia. Everyone is invited to become a member of the collective. By joining, you pledge to act in slowing childhood myopia progression. Membership includes regular updates and information about the collective's efforts, access to educational opportunities and resources, and insights from the ambassador optometrists who advocate for community policy and changes supporting the collective's mission. Click the link in the show notes to join the collective today. We've been partnering with EssilorLuxottica 360 for a while now, and it helps us in 3 areas. First, they use social media campaigns to highlight products that we believe in and prescribe to our patients, and they deliver those patients back to our practice. Second, EssilorLuxottica 360 enhances our patient experience through staff training tools that help us simplify and streamline the way we communicate about our products and services. Lastly, but for my practice most importantly, it helps us make good business decisions related to our optical offerings. We will systematically and objectively analyze what our patients are purchasing and what they like, and removing products that our patients are not really using or not really drawn to. This, along with additional rebates and immediate savings, helps us continue to deliver high-quality products and services to our patients and keeps our practice resilient. Check out EssilorLuxottica 360 for yourself by visiting EssilorLuxottica360.com.
Excellent questions. These are essential fatty acids. We have to consume them. And really, if you go back in human history and you look at folks who are healthy and have really good diets, they have these nutrients coming in regularly. And it looks like, in general, and this is based on, a lot of analysis of a lot of studies and NIH recommended levels. It looks like we should be getting about a half a gram, roughly 500 milligrams of EPA and DHA combined. And that's, in my mind, that's a pretty good threshold level, certainly for general cardiovascular health and, brain health. You're replenishing, particularly like in neural tissues. You mentioned the retina and the brain. DHA gets deposited there and accumulates in those tissues. EPA a little more systemic, but they work in concert, to reduce inflammation. And we hear so much about inflammation in society today. This chronic low-grade inflammation leads to every problem that you see out there, it seems. If you see commercials for pharmaceutical drugs, they're all treating inflammation. We don't want to get there, and we can really prevent it with these types of nutrients. With regard to dry eye, we're looking at a dose being higher, closer to 2 grams, 2,000 milligrams a day. Again, assuming that you're getting good, high quality, the actual level. And that can come in different forms. There's a natural form of the EPA and DHA. It's the triglyceride form, and that's what you see in fish. There's also an ethyl ester form. And so, the different forms, my preference certainly is the natural form. Ethyl ester can produce some fish burps. It can produce some other side effects. Nevertheless, it has been shown in some clinical trials to be effective. We have prescription medications. Vasipa is a brand, Loveza, that are ethyl ester forms. Nevertheless, relatively, they're pure, they have the amounts in them. So Bottom line, when we're talking about getting EPA and DHA into the body, we just want EPA and DHA in the supplement in the levels that are on the label. And so, how you do that is certainly your choice. I can argue one side or the other for sure. But I think that just the science has shown over many years, since really the early 1970s, that these have great benefit to cardiovascular health, certainly now cognitive health, the gut microbiome, dry eye, retinal health. It's across the board. And why wouldn't it be? I mean, it makes sense. We're supposed to get these nutrients in our body. They're, what they have in terms of their biological function is super important to us.
It's interesting, Jim, because you seem to have softened a bit. Maybe my thought of our prior discussions on the difference between the ethyl ester form and the triglyceride form. But am I hearing you soften a bit based on new literature that the difference may not be so important?
Oh gosh. Yeah, don't get me started. You know where I land on this argument. I'm trying to bring some peace here in the omega world. The natural triglyceride form is I think, in my opinion, much better. And this has been shown in studies as well. Bioavailability tends to be higher, sometimes quite high, compared to the ethyl ester form. There are some side effects associated with the ethyl ester form. And, I don't want to, disparage any companies here. That's not the purpose here. As a scientist, I can say that, yes, I believe that the reesterified triglyceride form of these omega-3s is better than the ethyl ester form. So, and then Ilana is raising her hand, so maybe she can chime in.
So hold on, Ilana. So Jim, I can see your position. You're a little bit more diplomatic than John is. And so maybe I should have posed that to John. No, but I think it's good. I think, as I'm listening to you, Jim, from my perspective, we can certainly have one that we prefer over another. But it's also okay, in my mind, to say, listen, as long as it has good components to it, it's going to be better than nothing. And we can make those choices, right? If we can make those informed decisions as physicians, we can allow our patients to make those informed decisions by understanding the nuances and the differences and then articulating those. And then the patient can make the choice. Alana, before I get John's probably less diplomatic response, what's your perspective here? Do you have is there anything that you're looking at it from?
Yeah, so I want to point out, first of all, 90% of people worldwide, 95% of Americans are not getting enough EPA and DHA. So that's the fundamental thing that we have to remember. And so as a dietitian, as somebody who, works with the general public, we just want to get these nutrients into their bodies. And so I'm almost indifferent about how they do that, just to get them in. And the other thing, too, is certainly with educated nutrition professionals, and I'm imagining also with physicians and doctors, there's still a lot of confusion about omega-3s in general. To talk even just EPA and DHA as opposed to ALA, people say, oh, you need more omega-3s, so have chia seeds. There's so much work that we still have to do at the baseline level that to really start, getting to the ethyl ester versus triglyceride is almost like a higher level of discussion.
No, this is great. So, Ilana, I think actually this is really interesting to me because, so talk about that, because I would say that, clinically, from my perspective, if somebody were to say, well, yeah, I have chia seeds, I'm not going to push back too much on that, but I should, it sounds like.
Well, chia seeds are a great source of, ALA is an omega-3. It's a shorter chain omega-3, but it's not going to give you the eye health, heart health, brain health benefits that EPA and DHA do. EPA and DHA.
What would it provide? So because this is good because I can have this conversation better with patients.
So ALA it's a source of energy that will provide to your body. It's a precursor to the to the EPA and the DHA. Although, quite honestly, Jim kind of touched upon it. we can make these nutrients in our bodies, but it's so inefficient that it's almost irrelevant to rely on ALA to give us the EPA and DHA. So we need to get the EPA and DHA directly from fatty fish or from a supplement. So ALA, as in unsaturated fat, and it's a polyunsaturated fat, really, so more unsaturated than normal, they're really good for your heart. But the heart health, triglyceride-lowering benefits, and the heart attack prevention, plus the eye health, plus the brain health, all of that, that's tied to EPA and DHA. That's really where we need to be focusing our education, because that's really where the science is. I mean, Jim mentioned it too, that DHA is concentrated in the brain and in the eye, in the retina. So of course you want those nutrients directly.
Yeah. No, I think that's really helpful because it allows us to at least have a conversation with those patients, even if they're sold on their chia seeds, which is fine, right? It's not a bad thing, but obviously it's going to be a lot harder for them to convert that into a long chain omega-3, into a DHA and EPA, and so it still allows us to articulate that point to them. What about, Alana, from your perspective as a dietitian, when I have a patient that tells me I eat a lot of fish, what are the kind of follow-up questions I ought to be asking them to know what a lot is and what would be sufficient, where I would be able to take a step back and say, that's great job, but we also need, to Jim's point, we need 500 milligrams of EPA and DHA for retinal and brain function. We need 2,000 for ocular surface dysfunction improvement. So what am I, if somebody says I eat a lot of fish, in my mind, it's like when you go out to dinner, you're picking fish half the time, probably. So what kind of follow-up questions do you ask?
Well, the first follow-up question you must ask is what fish? Because not all fish is a good source of EPA and DHA. So we like to tell consumers, think SMASH, so salmon, mackerel, anchovies, sardines, and herring. Those are the top 5 oiliest omega-3 rich fish. There's others too. I mean, mussels are a great source, oysters. But you've got to make sure that you're choosing omega-3 rich fish. Shrimp, not a source of omega-3, very common type of fish. Cod, not so great. So ask what type of fish, ask how much, like you said. The dietary guidelines ask people to get 2 servings of seafood a week, so, 2 4-ounce or so servings, which is kind of a lot. And again, though, we got to make sure that it's the omega-3 rich fish. And actually, there's been research that shows that even if people are eating that 2 servings of fish per week, their omega-3 index levels, the levels of EPA and DHA in the blood, is still not at that ideal range. So you still need to probably supplement. Yeah,
and so in the United States, the only fish you're mentioning that anybody eats is salmon. So forget about the other stuff. Nobody in the United States is eating that fish. Secondary, and I don't know about you, John, if it's true in Ireland as well, but salmon is, salmon is pretty much the only one. You could probably throw in mussels for some people and oysters. But if I'm eating 2 portions of 4-ounce salmon a week, what's the total omega-3 content in each one of those? Let's assume it's a good quality. Let's assume maybe there's a difference between farm raised, maybe there's not. I mean, tell me about that. Does that matter?
So farm versus wild catch, there are differences, but there are differences in both directions. So I tend not to pay much attention to that. But to have those 2 salmon servings a week, that's going to get you close to somewhere between 250 and 500 milligrams per day intake, which again, like I said,
sorry. But do you mean 250 to 500 milligrams each time I eat that portion, or in total on average for the week?
No,
total on average for the week.
Yeah, total on average for the week, because also EPA and DHA are stored in the body. So the 2 seafood a week, we're kind of, moderating we're dividing it, adding it up and dividing it over 7 to give us that daily intake. So 1 serving of salmon is going to have about 1,200 milligrams of EPA and DHA, roughly.
Great. Okay, that's perfect. Thank you. And so, but do you know, Jim, maybe, or John, you might know, maybe Alana, you know as well, what's the percentage of Americans that get that level of fish intake per week?
It's not much. The average American, I think, gets around 90 milligrams a day, which is, I mean, paltry at best. I mean, it's not much. And I think Alana mentioned earlier, like 95% of Americans are deficient, which means under 250 milligrams a day. And so, the 2 servings of fish a week is getting you in the right direction. But like she mentioned as well, we're kind of falling short on the omega-3 index. There are really pretty cool detailed maps of, around the world, different countries that are able to meet that. Certainly, countries that eat a lot more fish, Japan being one, certainly Norway, Finland, surrounded by water. Certainly the culture leads to more fish consumption. And you see, sort of this commensurate, reduced cardiovascular disease risk and things in those countries. So it's a pretty neat way to look at things. But yeah, I think generally speaking, we're here in the United States not getting nearly enough. I mean, it might be like 1/10 of the amount we need. And it freaks me out. Long term, you really see problems.
Well, so then I want to kind of loop this back around, Alana, with the omega-3 index. So even though,
one thing,
actually, yeah, John, I was just kind of waiting for you to.
I was sitting on the edge of my seat there. I was trying to be polite.
No, you were doing great. I was just going to see how long I could go, and you would hold your ideas.
Yeah, thank you. So I think there's a really important point here that we must protect. And that is the consumer. So we can have one conversation about omega being good for us and getting some is better than none and eat foods, and that's all really important, and we should have that conversation. But one key point here is that the consumer, the patient, my mother for example, is paying for a supplement that a company is selling her, and that company is making a lot of money to sell that supplement. So she's entitled to get what the company is telling her they're selling her. And that's why Supplement Certified exists. It is to help companies make sure they do the right thing. The challenge we have is that, and I think Alana may have made reference to this earlier, is, we speak about companies that join the likes of GOED and Supplement Certified, and we talk about good ethics. But in a way, we're asking them to self-regulate. The analogy I use is, it's kind of like saying, Chris, okay, it's really good of you or important that you tax your car, because the money that you get on taxing your car goes back into the infrastructure to make it safer for us to drive and so on. And the law has it that you have to tax your car or you can't drive. But in the context of tests and supplements, we're saying the same thing. We really think you should do Supplement Certified, but right now the law doesn't make them. So we're asking someone to put a tax on themselves that they just don't comply to. So the movement and the change in this regard is to look at organizations that are part of GOED and Supplement Certified that are working to do the right thing, to self-regulate in an unregulated environment, with a goal to protect you, Chris, the doctor, and your patient, most importantly. So I think there's two different conversations. I agree with Alana that getting some is better than not getting it all, but at the end of the day, we're talking about a transaction here between, for the most part, a consumer who makes a decision to budget their money to try and buy something to keep them healthy. The analogy I used on the Irish radio was, if my mum left the supermarket after buying 12 eggs and went home and opened the container and there was 10 or 8 eggs, she would go back to the store because she has visibility on that. So what Supplement Certified and third-party independent laboratories can do is help the company do the right thing and help the patient. And that's why we exist, and that's why this is important to me, because I never thought for a second, Chris, that the biggest challenge to our science, which Jim has said and others have seen, we know helps. The biggest challenge is now regulatory within that space to make sure companies are supported to do the right thing.
So I'm glad that you brought us back on that topic, John. I think, from my perspective, it was helpful to kind of refresh my mind in terms of why these things are important. And because the reality is that because I'll call it the Wild West, but because the Wild West exists in supplementation, it can be easy as a physician, it can be easy as a clinician to say, well, just try it, just do something, and then you just sort of throw your hands up. And so when you think about like the types of things, so it's all fine and well, John, that we want to analyze these supplements, make sure that there's what's in them is what we say is in them. But supplement certified is, I would have to submit. So that's the way it works, is right. I would submit to you. You would say, we're going to analyze this, and if it meets our standards, you're going to get the stamp of approval. And first of all, before I get into the next question I have, tell me about Supplement Certified's process again.
Yeah,
and so that the audience can remember, and then I'll have some other follow-up questions related to that.
Yeah, no, and it's a really good question, and it's a process actually, Chris, which has evolved in a very positive way by good collaboration with organizations to kind of see, we had an original idea that we'll measure, and we have these like premium organizations that's every time they produce their lot, they send it to us. So every time they encapsulate their product and get it ready to go, there's a sample sent to us, and that is treated by the third-party laboratory. It's measured, and the first thing it does that I think is very important is it distinguishes the components of the omega-3 fatty acids. So we break it down for the DHA and EPA, because if we believe, and as the science has shown, that understanding the levels and the different roles that these types of omega-3 play, being able to measure those is important. So for me, it's much better to do that than just looking at total omega-3 fatty acid. I think breaking it down, and actually on that point, one of the things we see in our own analysis is that more often than not, if a company is to fail on its label claim, it'll fail on EPA and not DHA. They tend to have enough DHA, and we're looking into why that is. But to answer your question,
so John, can I ask you? So the first question is: does the product have what the label says it has?
Yes, and the labels typically distinguish like such amount of EPA and DHA. So they don't say, might say total omega-3 as well, but they typically say DHA at whatever milligrams and EPA. So we absolutely measure that, and we distinguish between the different types of omega. And then the second question it does is it looks at it, it puts these supplements on a stability program, which is in a very defined and controlled environment. We typically go to 25 degrees Celsius, which is the upper recommended temperature for storage. My preference would be to do it low, but we measure at all different temperatures. But we will put it on a stability program, which means that, for example, if a product is providing the patient with a 90-day supply, does that product stay stable over those 90 days? Because there's a lot can happen with oxidation. We see this once you open containers and so on, and you leave them in your, what happens to them? Now, this is much more of an issue with carotenoids, but it can be an issue as well with omega-3 fatty acids and the storage of same. And the third and final piece of work that Supplement Certified does for its partner company is it can do a shelf life experiment, which is every company will with their encapsulator agree on an expiry date, and a little bit of that based on my research is finger in the air stuff. Let's pick 2 years. I see Alana laughing because it really is. It's like so we help companies understand their shelf life and validate their shelf life. And Jim Stringham from MacuHealth, this is the type of program that MacuHealth have put themselves on, and Supplement Certified are proud to have that partnership, but we also have partners with competitors to MacuHealth. So there are companies who see the value, Chris, in getting the data so that they can work better with their supplements and manage even the encapsulation bit better, but they also then feel confident communicating to the likes of yourself and your patients that this company is going all in to self-regulate and to tax itself to do a very good job.
So I think that's really interesting because, you know, in my experience as well, you know, I founded a company called Peak. Have you ever done this with tea tree oil?
No,
Would you be able to do it with tea tree oil concentrations and stabilities?
Absolutely.
Oh, that's really interesting because what we've found in you made the point of like putting your finger in the air, but what we've found with manufacturers is that is true. I mean, Alana, you laughed as well. I'd love to hear your perspective, but we found that to be the case where it's like, well, we think it's going to be stable for this long, and so that's the the expiration date, and the reality is that most patients, if they're using that on any relatively regular basis, is going to use it up well in advance of that. You know, so it is different, and it for a number of reasons. But it actually now strikes me of like, could we apply this to other things? Would it be a dramatically different process for you to analyze concentration of, say, tea tree oil or other?
We can do all of that. We have all the systems in our laboratory. It's like having a toolbox. If you picture a carpenter, we have an analytical toolbox of systems which are HPLCs, GCs, mass spec, you know, atomic absorption. They just are different ways to do analysis of bioactive compounds. And that's what's unique about Supplement Certified. We have now patented processes in terms of how we do that. Our laboratory, the whole system and protocols we use are ISO 17025 approved for that analysis. So it's totally independent and it is valid and accurate. So
when new companies come onto the market, do you find them developing? I think we had this conversation before, but do you find them developing the product first and then coming to you and then trying to adjust it based on your recommendations, or do they develop the product or do they develop the product, put it out, market it, and then say, hey, what do you think about this? Like, obviously, how does that usually work?
They typically develop the product first and then see, is this good, and pray. And then if they don't like the answer, good companies will make, you know, we've worked with companies that have seen, we analysed last week for a company has just been acquired, a new carotenoid Omega, and, you know, really not delivering on what those bioactives should be, but that company is going to make the changes to try and, you know, change things. And that's why this is important, because now the patient and the consumer is not going to be damaged by getting a supplement that's not doing what it should do to improve their health or protect their health.
So then this is sort of a question to anybody that wants to chime in. So I think the next thing I think about is, okay, so we've gone through all this work. It's really important to validate what we're saying and to kind of make sure that the label is what it says it is, or the product is what the label says it is. It will be stable after it's opened, and it will have some shelf life that is predictable. How does the public, how do we as physicians educate the public about this? And then what specifically are organizations like GOED doing to make the public aware of these sort of claims, as well as Supplement Certified? So Alana, go ahead. I'll let you go first.
Yeah, so I mean, I think the consumer, I mean, what they want to do is they want to open their pill, take it, and forget it. You know, I don't think they're going to, you know, say, well, gosh, is this going to last me for 2 months? Or, I mean, they want to get their money's worth. They don't want to have to throw it away early. So what we have actually is we have an infographic that talks about or explains to the consumer things to look for if you, or how to store and keep your supplements, you know, safe, let's say. Safe is not quite the word, but, you know, you have to smell it. Does it smell a little rancid? You know, then there might be a problem. Are you storing it in the wrong temperature conditions, in the wrong moisture conditions? You know, sometimes people like to put their omega-3s in the fridge. Actually, I mean, the fridge is not terrible, but in the freezer, absolutely not, because that's going to make the soft gel really brittle. You know, and so there's other things, and the Best Buy or the, you know, the stamps that they that they put on there is really, when the product is guaranteed. But I use that as almost the last line, as part of like the tool in the toolbox. Smell it, taste it. Is it, is there something that's been stored wrong? And if it's past its date, maybe then it's time to go. But otherwise, I think it's just like with the food. You want to trust your gut and trust your taste, and then use the best by date stamped on it as just one more piece of information.
Great. John and Jim, what about the supplement certified, and from a MacuHealth standpoint? So Jim, MacuHealth standpoint, John, as a supplement certified standpoint, what do you do to try to make the public aware of what you're doing?
So yeah, I'll start, John. I mean, from MacuHealth's perspective, and again, coming from science, the vast majority of my career have been in academia, and come on as the chief scientific officer for MacuHealth, and my assumption coming into industry was that they're able to produce the supplements. It's got what it says it's got in it, and it's going to have the same effects as what we see in science. And that would be brilliant if that were the case. And certainly, we ensure that. And, a big part of this is supplement certified, making sure if something's not quite right, we redo it. It's expensive, but it's worth it. Every penny of it is worth it. What we do really is we work with doctors like yourself, Chris. I mean, we look at it like, okay, we can recommend, and certainly I give talks to doctors. I give talks to all sorts of groups on the importance of ensuring, quality supplementation and consistency and the like. But when it comes to doctors and patients, that relationship, should involve, as a level of respect that is like, okay, well, Dr. Wolfe said, this is probably the best thing for me to take, the best one. I know that I can go down the street and get, something that's quite a bit cheaper, but really, as Professor Nolan is kind of famous for saying, the most expensive supplement that you can take is the one that doesn't work. And it doesn't do anything, or worse, it hurts you. I mean, there's evidence for that now too.
Yeah, we haven't even talked about that. But yeah, what if that's the other thing is, like, what if it does have something? We haven't seen a lawsuit like that, but with some of the eye drops that we've seen in the last couple of years, where infections have occurred, and we haven't even discussed the option that it not only could it hurt that it doesn't help you, but like it actually could hurt you, which we haven't seen, fortunately, but.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen some evidence for the actual, sort of potential for harm, and there's been independent analysis by, a group out of Harvard that shows, in top-selling fish oil supplements, these, excessive saturated fats and oxidized lipids, oxidative LDL, which is a marker for heart disease. You don't want to put that stuff in your body, and so I guess the cautionary tale here is. And why it's so great that we've gathered to discuss this here is really, like John said, for consumer protection. I mean, ultimately, it's the consumer that trusts. We want consumers to trust the science. We want consumers to trust doctors and trust that when they're putting their money into something, that it's going to do what they saw on the news, or maybe their friend told them, they read a scientific article and said, well, look, this is having a lot of benefit. We don't want to dupe anybody. I mean, and I fear that sometimes, that's happening. And so this process of third-party testing and reassurance is really going to prevent that kind of thing from happening.
And we know the companies can do it. And we know the companies can and have been able to improve their formulations. And we know that that's going to make that company more successful, because the product's going to work better, the consumer is going to be happier, and what we want is to kind of build upon the great work that's happening with GOED and its members, is to have this other piece of work. We don't want, with respect, patients to have to even do a piece of work to, smell or look or whatever. We want these formulas to be created in a way that when we have, like, when we have this logo, that's the logo, and this is, there can be other certification programs, but that type of logo, that it means something to all of us. And that doesn't happen easily, Chris. It's not just a logo that we stick on a box. There's a whole wonderful partnership, relationship that's built between the scientists at Supplement Certified, that process, and the companies that want to really optimize what they're doing for their business. And what business wouldn't want to do that? So we're really excited about, all of these wonderful partnerships, and where they're going, and what this represents. And we've seen its success already. We've seen this help companies, not just MacuHealth, many other companies now that have successfully partnered with us. And to that point, good news for the Omega world. I believe we need to get much more of this out there, and we need to find a safe way to do that. And I am absolutely sure that, support via organizations like Supplement Certified, third-party testing. And I'm so happy about this because we have much more research ongoing. We've just started a program called the Label Study, which is a full PhD program. And part of that is we have all the quantitative work done, which is showing the extent of supplements that fail on their label claim, and some of the powder-based supplements will just degrade so quickly that they fall off the cliff. So there's a lot of data that we have there. But another important piece of research is what we call qualitative research. And I'm working with a scientist, Dr. Anne Graham, who's specialist in that area, and we're working with the consumer. And they're out in the field already talking to patients about their trust on label. It's unbelievable what we're learning already about how the consumer has so much confidence and belief in the label. And imagine if you were to tell that consumer that there might be issues, that the label is not standing up. And then when we speak to the companies, and this will be part of the research, why it's important to the companies, again, back to Alana's point, companies with good ethics, which is your classic definition of companies that join GOED. They want to have access to the right stuff. They want to get the information to do the proper testing. And we just see ourselves as an organization that's part of that, and will complement that and make the supplement industry a really more efficient industry. Because we have thankfully moved away, even in our own industry, Chris, you and I have been working in eye care for a long time. When I started my work, supplements weren't on the table. It was definitely not something that was done. And that's positively changed for two reasons. A, good science with particular formulas that are sourced in a certain way, that are formulated in a certain way, that are given over a period of time at a certain dose. So that's exact science. And if you're a really good company, you get access to that exact science. And then the other piece is that you deliver on what that formulation should be.
I'm not sure I could end it better than that, Dr. John Nolan. So let's do this. I think if you can, Alana, if you can provide me, so I'm going to provide links in the show notes to Supplement Certified, obviously to MacuHealth. And Alana, if you can provide links for where physicians and patients can get access to GOED resources, specifically that flow chart, that would be really helpful. And I want to say thanks again. I think this was a lot of helpful to kind of think through all of these different aspects of kind of the continuum of omega-3s from a clinician standpoint, from a patient standpoint, from a manufacturer standpoint, and then a testing standpoint. So thanks all of you for coming on today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Chris. This is awesome. Yeah,
well
great
done.
job.
Thank you, Chris, for everything you do. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Yeah. Thanks.
Hey, if you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts and our YouTube channel, both linked in the show notes. Now, here's something exciting. We're giving away a 1-year subscription to Comprehensive Optometry Simplified. All you have to do is leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, take a screenshot, and email it to me at questions@icodeeducation.com. We'll put that in the show notes as well. We'll be selecting a winner on December 15th, so don't miss your chance to get access to this valuable resource. Thanks again for listening. I can't wait to see your reviews.